This is the chilling final moments of Hannah Graham. Her attacker had followed her home from a night out with friends, but when he tried to talk to her, she rejected him immediately. Her last words were, "I'm not getting in the car with you." And with that, she ran into her apartment and shut the door. But it wasn't the end, not by a long shot. In fact, what happened next would shock the whole nation. This is the terrifying story of serial killer Jesse Matthew and his victim, Hannah Graham. But who was Hannah? To those who knew her, Hannah Graham was a bright light in the darkness. She was a beautiful young woman with a great sense of humor and an infectious smile. She loved to dance, travel, and spend time with her friends. She was also incredibly ambitious, studying business at the University of Virginia with dreams of one day starting her own company. When Hannah went out with her friends, they said she always made sure everyone was having fun. On the night of September 13th, 2014, Hannah and her friends had been celebrating the end of the summer with a night out in downtown Charlottesville, Virginia. They took turns going out to their favorite bars and restaurants. At around 1 a.m., Hannah texted her mother saying, "I love you, going home now," before heading out for the last time. At 1:08 a.m., Hannah was captured on security camera walking alone down a deserted street. It was out of character for Hannah to be walking alone so late at night. In fact, her friends said she was adamant about taking cabs or Ubers home at night. But for some reason, she decided to walk. Just minutes later, at 1:15 a.m., she walked right past her apartment building without realizing that she was only moments away from her final moments alive. Instead, Hannah continued walking until she reached the 1200 block of Jefferson Park Avenue, where she turned left onto a narrow sidewalk along a row of houses. It was here that detectives believed Hannah encountered her killer. The man who would come to be known as the Charlottesville Moonlight Stalker had been watching Hannah on her night out. He had followed her from bar to bar for hours, stalking her every move. And now, with the streets nearly empty, he made his move. What happened next is anyone's guess. We know that Hannah never made it home that night. What we don't know is whether she fought back, whether she screamed for help, or if she simply walked into the darkness and vanished. At first, it seemed like a standard missing persons case. Friends and family held a candlelight vigil, handed out flyers, anything to bring attention to the case. But as days turned into weeks and still no trace of Hannah was found, the public began to lose interest. That was until the police released security camera footage showing Hannah walking alone through the deserted streets. Suddenly, the case was all over the news. Over 200 people joined the search party, combing through the woods near Hannah's house, but they found nothing. It seemed as if Hannah had literally vanished into thin air. Her phone was never recovered, her wallet was never found, and the only thing that turned up was a single strand of her hair. Meanwhile, investigators were following up on hundreds of tips, but none panned out. They checked everywhere Hannah liked to frequent and even offered a $100,000 reward for any information leading to her whereabouts. But as the weeks dragged on, it became clear that whoever had taken Hannah had done everything they could to cover their tracks. Then, in a stroke of luck, police received an anonymous tip that led them to a wooded area behind some apartment complexes less than a mile from Hannah's apartment. There, they found some clothes that matched what Hannah had been wearing the night she disappeared. But it wasn't until 2 months later that the break in the case finally came. Police received a tip that led them to a secluded area of woods in a different part of town. As a swarm of police descended on the area, digging through the dirt and debris, someone driving by called out, "There's a body over there!" And sure enough, hidden amongst the trees, they found the remains of Hannah Graham. Although it was too decomposed to tell for sure, they believed it was her. As the news broke, the entire town was shaken to its core. For the first time in a long time, the question wasn't who did it, but who was the mastermind behind it all. It didn't take long for the police to discover the man they were looking for. His name was Jesse Matthew, and as they delved deeper into his past, they uncovered a disturbing pattern of behavior. When questioned by police, Jesse Matthew gave them a series of alibis that quickly fell apart under scrutiny. But when they searched his car, they found traces of Hannah's DNA, which linked him directly to the crime. He was arrested and charged with abduction with the intent to defile. In court, Jesse Matthew looked like any ordinary guy. He was well-dressed, articulate, and seemingly remorseful. But behind that facade, something sinister lurked. A review of his social media accounts revealed a disturbing obsession with young women. One of his Facebook posts read, "You are my oxygen," and another said, "She's always on my mind." Underneath, he tagged a photo of a young woman who had recently graduated from high school. But it was when police searched Matthew's apartment that they found the real evidence. On his mattress was a large stain that looked suspiciously like blood. And in his freezer, they found a number of plastic bags that had once contained body parts. Although DNA testing was unable to confirm that the blood was Hannah's, it was enough to charge him with murder. In the courtroom, Jesse Matthew sat silently as the evidence against him was presented. He showed no emotion as the prosecutor painted a grim picture of what had happened to Hannah. But the most shocking revelation was yet to come. DNA testing revealed that Jesse Matthew was responsible for a string of attacks that had puzzled police for years. In each case, a young woman had been approached from behind and forcibly taken to a secluded area where she was assaulted. Then they were left to wander the streets dazed and confused. For a moment, it all made sense. All the pieces of the puzzle came together. Jesse Matthew was not just a monster, he was a serial killer. But as the trial dragged on, it became clear that there was more to the case than met the eye. Witnesses came forward claiming that Jesse Matthew had confessed to the killings, but he had no motive. He wasn't angry, jealous, or driven by revenge. He was simply a predator who found pleasure in the hunt. According to one witness, Jesse Matthew had told them, "I can't help myself. I saw her and I lost control. I had to have her." Another witness said that Matthew had boasted about his crimes, telling them that he had done bad things. But as the trial continued, it became clear that Jesse Matthew was not quite right. During one particularly disturbing exchange, Matthew was asked, "Do you think you should be locked up?" To which he replied, "No, I shouldn't be locked up." "Why should I be locked up? I've committed no crime." But there was one person who saw through his facade: Hannah's mother. From the moment she learned that Jesse Matthew was responsible for her daughter's death, she vowed to bring him to justice. And in the years since then, she has become an advocate for victims of crime, helping others who have been through similar tragedies to find the strength to carry on. One of the ways she honors her daughter's memory is by advocating for stronger DNA laws. In Virginia, DNA samples from crime scenes cannot be kept if they are not used in a trial. This means that potential evidence in cold cases is often lost forever. Hannah's mother is working to change that, hoping that other families will not have to suffer the same fate as hers. In the end, Jesse Matthew was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. As he was led away in handcuffs, he looked back at Hannah's family and mouthed the words, "I'm sorry." But those 3 words were not enough to bring Hannah back. In the years since then, the town has slowly begun to heal. A park bench was placed in Hannah's honor near the apartment complex where she was killed. And each year on the anniversary of her death, people gather there to remember her and support her family. So what is the legacy of this evil serial killer? How do we prevent these monsters from striking again? Well, perhaps the answer lies in the small things we can do every day. Be aware of your surroundings, trust your instincts, and don't be afraid to speak up if you see something that doesn't seem right. Because sometimes that gut feeling you get might just save your life.